Okay, we'll go back to the beginning then. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's what we know and we don't know in H-1B filing for the next 2024 season, we could call it, or you call it fiscal year 2025. It's called fiscal year 2025. The fiscal year starts October 1st, 2024, and runs for 365 days to September 30th, 2025. That's called fiscal year 2025. If that's confusing, those of us that use the standard calendar consider this 2024 because we're going to register for these somewhere around March 1st, 2024. We're going to have our first filings available to us as early as April 1st, 2024, and for a 90-day period, unless they change it, right? We don't know what there is and what there isn't. So what do we know? We know that there will be an online filing system. We will then come back with some pieces on that, Pierre. We know that the online filing system will allow us to not have to FedEx anymore. So we're going to save money. We're going to have online filing, so the check issues go away. It should be transformative. We need to learn it. We'll be ready for that on the webinar. So that's your homework. Yes. All right. Next piece. What's going to happen on registrations? We're going to register for H-1Bs probably sometime in early March, but we don't know that for sure. Last year it was $10. We don't know what it'll be this year. There are rumors out there that are all over the place that there'll be no change. It'll be $10 again. There's rumors that it'll be $250. At this point, none of those rumors are true, although they may be predictions that will be true. Let's talk about the other rumors on how the process will change. Yes, what is a rumor of a changed registration process for this year?
So one of it is each beneficiary, you're registering for the beneficiary based on their unique passport number.
Right.
So even if 10 companies register the beneficiary based on the passport number, if you get selected, if one beneficiary gets selected, all 10 companies will be notified of the selection. And so it'll give the beneficiaries a little bit more choice to go to and pick whichever company has a legitimate job offer. That's one proposed rumor, I guess. I don't know how that will help with the multiple registrations. Because it's still allowing multiple people to register for you, but I
Yeah,
guess
it
it's just
doesn't sound
counting it
like
as
it's
one
a routine,
registration.
right? Interesting, right? So look, again, this is a rumor. We don't know this to be the case. These rumors find their way into message boards where attorneys and non-attorneys alike, beneficiaries, wonder what's going to happen. So please do not take what we're telling you today as this is how it's going to be. We're talking about rumors, right? So the rumor that Yesh has that a beneficiary's passport number will be the unique identifier is a great idea. What's weird about how Yesh is describing this rumor, which isn't true or isn't true yet, or is just
Has
merely a
not been
prediction,
codified.
is that it doesn't make any sense because it has both the registration by the company and for the beneficiary on that. It would make more sense if the beneficiary registered for an H-1B and then could take that approval to whatever company they wanted to that would offer them a job that would meet the specialty occupation requirements, because the companies aren't proving that part at the registration anyway. You know, you could win the registration if your company isn't sufficient to be an H-1B company because it doesn't have any employees or workstation or anything like that. It's just a kind of a little more than a fictitious thing, or it's sitting on the side. That doesn't give you a very good chance of getting it approved. But there's no analysis of that. There's no analysis of the job being a specialty occupation. So why even have the company involved, right? Let the people, be picked, and 65,000 of them get picked, and then they go and they find companies that will hire them in the next 3 months, and then they file, right? So I don't know why it would have to be 3 months. It should probably be 6 months, right? You get 6 months to file an H-1B for an October 1 start date, why not give them until September 30th to file? So there's all sorts of things that could happen. There's all sorts of ideas that we and everybody else in this industry has. But that's an interesting rumor. Any other rumors about registration, Yesh?
The costs, I mean, we've already
Yeah.
talked about that. But that's registration wise, that's what we're seeing chatter on.
Okay. I think another thing we can talk about is how many are going to register, right? This is a complete guess. This has been a game we've all played. Here's some factors to know. 2023 had over 800,000 and 800,000 registrations, and we should find that number out for Tuesday. 2022 had over 400,000 registrations. We should find that number. And 2021 had over 300,000 in registrations. No, I'm sorry, had over 200,000 in registrations. All of those were the highest ever up until that time. The last 3 years, highest ever. And we went from 200 to 400, 100% improvement. And then 400 to 800, another 100% improvement, which is ridiculous. But then there was a lot of fear on double registration, and very few applied. 800,000 picked and very few applied. And how much of a bummer that is if you think about it, right? So with that many people picking, the percentage of getting picked was very, very low. These folks, that are coming to work in America, or maybe just graduated in the United States, or have degrees that want to finally get a job, companies didn't apply for them. And we know not many did, because there are 65,000 H-1Bs available across the board, and then an additional 20,000 for graduates with advanced degrees. That means a master's degree or a PhD from a U.S. university. That is the additional 20,000. So that's 85,000. So we know that not many were applied because there was a second wave. So the first wave started in April, ended at the end of June, and then it all went in. USCIS said how many are there, and then reissued a new wave. And in that new wave, they came out with 77,000 available visas out of 85,000, right? So that meant only 8,000 of the 800,000 that applied registered at the beginning, that initial wave. Now, the second wave filled it up. So I guess people figured it out, and all the H-1Bs were used. We know that because there wasn't a third wave, right? So there was 2 waves last year. So the question on predictions, how many will be registered this year? Now, we can make this prediction as of, late January 2023, but we can change our prediction if they change the formula. But assuming the same formula, that companies can register for beneficiaries, how many do we think will be there? Yes to you. How many do you think will register this year?
Probably close to 900, if I'm not far reaching, just
Right.
because
Going up.
there seems to be a lot more people coming in. The people that are students that are graduating are all going to try their luck from day one.
Right.
And just seeing the trends of like how many students have come in the past 2 years, past COVID,
Right.
after that freeze, it's mind blowing the number of people that are graduating into this market right now. So I feel like there's going to be a lot more registrations. Um, if USCIS wants to clump, a single 10 or 20 registrations based on one passport number into as one registration, then maybe that'll decrease the numbers. But I feel like the number of companies that are going to register for these beneficiaries is going to increase. There's just too many people out there.
That's interesting. Ashley, do you have an opinion?
No, I think I agree with Yash.
Okay. You're going with up. What about you,
Yeah.
Pierre?
We're going with up.
I think it's gonna be 1 million this year. Let's see.
1 million.
Let's see how it
million people
goes.
registering for the H-1B. That's fantastic.
I do have a
Shooting
question.
high.
Though.
1 billion.
1 billion. No, I do have a question. So
how many will be evil H-1Bs?
there's gonna be a lot of them.
Approximately half.
It's tied to the passport number. Can't the
Right.
electronic system just deny a case immediately if it's the same passport number double? Could
Maybe.
they?
I don't know. These are good questions. Look, they were definitely twisted up about this process, right? I mean, they being USCIS put a lot of effort and discussion and to try to tamper down. That's why 10% of the people that were picked up filed, right? It's crazy, right? So you guys are thinking even more are going to file when only 8,000 filed in April last year, or the April-June scenario. Um, I I posit a smaller number, and I think there's still, and I hope I'm wrong, honestly, but I think there'll be a smaller number because there's a bit of a chill right now on companies being able to get contracts. Um, there's $2 trillion of investment money in the United States sitting on the sideline, not investing in technology the way it had a couple of years ago. A trillion outside the United States. So that's 3 trillion of money that usually makes investments, not making investments. And because of that, people aren't advancing their projects as much, right? So the big companies aren't trying as many things. And we saw a lot of layoffs last year at Facebook,
And this year,
Amazon,
even this year.
Google, all those places. And I think some of those folks were absorbed by the staffing companies, which saved the day back in 2010 and 2009, the last time that happened. But immigration's being hard, right? I mean, immigration is coming up with these fraud claims. They're scaring people, right? So
Yeah.
if you combine we're going to have more site investigations than we've ever had, and that we're going to hang up visas on 221Gs, asking for more specific project related things, even though the IT serve case said you can't ask for it, USCIS. The State Department says we're not talking to us, even though it's totally about the analysis is the same. But the State Department is still asking for it. I think there's a fear factor out there on people that would have filed that aren't for various, what I think, even legitimate reasons. So will that change by March 1st? I don't know. I mean, the economy is upticking right now. We had an incredible increase of jobs in January. I think people thought that the uptick would happen middle of the year, late in the year, wouldn't because of the election, but it is. And I think it is because we've gotten past COVID. Some of the problems of COVID with supply chain has resolved itself. Technology is still required. People still need projects. They still need things done, right? And so
Yeah.
you're not going to not do something. You're just finding a different way to do it. So I think where the venture capital was funding a lot of it, I see more lean and mean stuff. I see more of the staffing companies developing internal projects that are real, legitimate, and getting to market because no one is throwing money at the other ones, right? So I'm skeptical of 1 million or maybe even 800,000 because I think it was inflated because of multiple filings, right? I think there weren't 800,000 people applying, there were 800,000 registrations, right?
Registration.
So do you reduce it by 10, right? Did everybody go to 10 different companies? And will companies say, look, I'm not going to register you if you're registering with anybody else? I think they say that, a lot of them. I don't think the beneficiaries always listen to
Truthful.
them or tell the truth, right? Because they're worried, right? I'd be worried if I needed to have a job and I wanted to stay in America or had a great job offer in America. I would apply because it's not illegal, right? There's nothing illegal, immoral, unethical, fraudulent to apply with more than one employer. That's what anybody would do, right? That's about getting a job and having more than one interview and not saying, well, I can only interview with one company. That's even farther approach from this because this is prior to an interview or not even really with an interview. Sometimes people trying to get enough tech staff to build their company. And so, once they're picked up, then you were seeing an interview process starting with some of them, right? Others really want somebody and they know who they are and they got one visa they're going to apply. And then they got to go in there with the person that has 30, 30 applications. I heard once somebody put in 70 registrations
Yep.
1 year. Crazy, right? So that's
He got
interesting.
29 or 27 picked up or something like that.
Right. What do you do there? Okay, so we got $1 million for Pierre. We got a tie at 900 with Yesh and Ashley. I'm gonna say 500 just to be the negative.
Is this like the Price is Right? So John will
Yes,
probably
it is.
win
So I
because
can
he won't go over.
You guys are over. It's not closest. It's over. No, that's funny. Gabby, what did you think?
Just about in
How
general.
many registrations?
Ooh, how I think we're gonna get. I think we're gonna get 50,000.
50,000. So we're going to go from 800,000 down to 50.
Oh, maybe.
Okay.
You never know.
I don't think that's a thoughtful answer.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's a strategic answer.
It's a strategic
That's
answer.
He's
because-
definitely not going to go over.
Right. Okay. So we're going to change the rules that it's closest, not just going over. Still want to stay with 50?
Yep.
Okay. You're looking for an economic collapse.
No, I'm not. Just a prediction.
Okay. Well, don't put it out there. You just
okay.
told the. You
I
just
hope
told
it.
the
I
universe.
hope I don't win.
Okay, good. Way to go against yourself. All right. All right, that's fun. Okay, so after we do the registrations and stuff like that, we'll talk about double registration. We talked about this a minute earlier. All right, so yes, double registrations. What are some examples of what is absolutely improper under the law that you'll never win a case on regarding double registration?
Oh, just the first thing that comes to mind is if your company filed more than once for you,
Yeah,
the same company
that can
filing
happen,
more
right?
than once,
What if it's an
make
accident?
sure.
What if it's an
Doesn't
accident?
matter.
It doesn't
I
matter,
was
right?
about to say, make sure that, I guess, as a company, if you're in charge of registering your beneficiaries, make sure that
Yeah.
the names are correct. If you make a mistake when the first try your first registration, delete that mistake and do it again. Don't just leave it in there, and because USCIS does not take kindly to those. And
Yeah.
plus, you have a chance to review and delete them while the registration period is still open. So it's not like a one and done. You do
That's
have a
true,
chance
right?
to
So
review them.
if you do it, say the registration starts March 1st and ends March 24th, which was similar to what it was last year. I don't know if it's exactly it. You could register on March 1st, delete on March 10th.
Yeah.
Or March 23rd.
If you
for
catch that
matter.
mistake.
If you catch the mistake. Once it goes past the time and it's now April 1st, you can't delete that mistake.
You're out.
Okay, so
No.
you register the guy on March 1st. You register that person again accidentally on March 22nd. You find out on March 23rd, and then you erase one of them on March 23rd. You're okay.
Before, as long as you fix your mistake before selection and registration process ends.
Okay, that's a great nugget of what to do, right? Because you can't claim mistake. They won't do it. There is a concept called nunc pro tunc, where you file claiming mistake, for various things. And some things are forgiven by immigration. This one isn't, is it? We haven't
Not
seen
this
anything
one.
about it. Yeah. Okay. So that's what the law says. The same company can't file twice. What are some examples of USCIS's policy let's talk about USCIS's policy. USCIS has a policy memorandum it noted in its final rules when they put it out for before the final rule. I'm sorry, when they put it out for notice and comment. They notice and comment, if you don't know, is when Congress comes up with the language for a regulation, it then publishes that in the Federal Register, and then notice and comment is available for stakeholders. Stakeholders can be beneficiaries, petitioners, law firms, really kind of anybody can be a stakeholder. They'll go in and ask questions, and then, somebody will answer those questions, right? Usually immigration, I guess. So what we noticed in the questions and answers is that immigration, while the plain language was the same company doesn't do it, had a policy about a company and its vendor, right? So if a staffing company is hiring Pierre and then is going to subcontract Pierre out to a vendor, and the vendor applies for Pierre, they think that that relationship is enough to say that you negate both visas, right? Even though the law doesn't say that, that's their policy, right? Now we've seen an extension of that policy because really what they're trying to do is the law says the two companies can't do it. They've added something called conspiracy to commit fraud. All right. And the conspiracy
Yeah.
to commit fraud, or collusion to commit fraud, I believe. Collusion to commit fraud is, if this was criminal, which it's not, then fraud is intent, right? You'd have to prove that somebody colluded, meaning came up with a plan to then commit fraud. And fraud is a standard of, this highly egregious action. That they would have had to do that, right? And you'd have to prove they did it. But USCIS is not going for criminal fraud, or most of these, but they're finding fraud. And they're finding fraud if two vendors are filing for the same person. And what we're seeing is usually with data. They think if there's enough of it, then it smells like fraud. So, yes, give us an example of where we're seeing the vendor staffing company fraud. What's that language look like in the RFEs, denials, and notice of intent to deny and revoke?
So what we're seeing is they're taking a look at the data and they're saying, hey, company A filed 100 beneficiaries, or registered for 100 beneficiaries.
Right.
Company B is also registered, let's say 35 of these 100 beneficiaries. They're saying that's enough overlap.
Right.
To say that the two companies colluded to commit fraud.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. So they take the numbers, they'll put the names on an RFE, and they'll give you a chance to rebut it, but it's really hard to rebut, right? And they or they're not accepting too many rebuttals. Some rebuttals you can make are, we didn't know. I mean, and then there's some reasonable ways you didn't know. There are recruiting agencies, right, that are introducing potential employees to us, and they introduced them to them, and we didn't have a conversation about it. We need people, right? We need 100. They need 30. Those same
recruiters
30
need money.
they did are there. And USCIS will, in some instances, most instances, still say no and deny the case without any proving of fraud. And one of the biggest issues is that fraud finding attaches to the beneficiary. The beneficiary may have had no knowledge of this, and definitely no inclusion of it, and no decision-making ability on it, right? The companies need people. The beneficiary is just one of the many that they may or may not get. They don't know if the beneficiary is going to get through the lottery or not. So they file for them. So what happens if the beneficiary has a finding of fraud for a company, they never get the visa, then they go get another visa, and then they're denied at the consulate or turned down because of their fraud finding, and they don't even know they had it, and they never had a chance to rebut it. So there's some lawsuits out there on behalf of these beneficiaries right now. I don't think they've been resolved yet. Maybe some have been settled. There's been no court decision, but there's some of those out there. I think there's potential for a lawsuit on behalf of the companies too. To me, how you look at these things is you have a couple of things. One, you have the plain language of the regulation, and it's not a violation of the plain language of a regulation for two different companies to file to employ somebody, whether they know each other or not. It's not fraudulent and it's not illegal. And even if they have a conversation to do it, they're not related companies, right? And there was a thing in the notice, the comment time about related companies, but they, could be a parent and a subsidiary. And they said, or an affiliate. So a related company is where one company has the controlling interest of another company. That's a parent subsidiary. An affiliated company is Pierre and I would have affiliated companies if I owned a company and I had 50% and Pierre owned 50%, and we had another company and Pierre owned 50% and I owned 50%, right? Those are affiliated companies. They're two different companies, but the same owners at the same equity pieces own them. That's affiliated companies. So their policy extends to affiliated companies can't do double filing unless there's a reasonable business necessity, right? Well, I think I'd be a pretty low bar. We need people. We're going after the same people. If they get them, great. If we get them, great. I mean, we need them, right? We need people. We got work. We got it. We want to get it done, right? So USCIS is acting beyond the notice and comment that it said what was right and what was wrong, and going after companies that have commonalities. That's the term we're seeing in the RFE. So, yes, tell us a little bit about some of the commonalities that we've seen them raise.
If two companies are owned by family members,
So relatives
HR.
does not include people that are related. I mean, relatives are not related companies under the definition of a related company. If Gabby, my daughter, owns a company and I own a company, they're not related companies because even though we're relatives, right? That's not the definition. A related company means the companies are related, not the owners of the companies are related. It's not what they said was wrong, right? Yet they're denying these cases or issuing RFEs on some of them and things like that. Okay, that's an example. Give me another example of a commonality we're seeing: RFEs, notice of intent to revoke, notice of intent to deny, and denials over.
Similar HRs.
Similar
HR personnel.
So you got an HR director working with a series of companies, and they're saying because they had the same HR director, then they're saying must have conspired. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they're making these determinations without putting somebody on the stand, cross-examining them, and giving them a chance to tell their story, right, in court. They're just saying fraud, right? Yeah. There's examples where that similar HR directors, it doesn't mean there was conspiracy. Sometimes the registrations may not have been done by the HR directors. The HR director may do some of the HR actions in company A and a different set in company B, right? Now, does it smell bad? Sure. But, is it absolutely wrong? And is it illegal, right? Is it what this regulation stops? So if they're related companies and they have the same HR director and they both have a reasonable need for that person, then that complies with the law. If they're unrelated companies just sharing the same HR director to have some, what do you call that? Economies of scale. So they share an HR director comes in, does some stuff, and they apply for the same people, and they're not related companies. Where's the fire, right? I mean, they're trying to hire somebody, right? The vendor thing still is beyond that, right? I mean, I guess that one looks worse and they don't like it, but I think all of this is probably an issue for litigation, right? It would be, this is what litigation's all about, is getting a federal judge that's not in the agency to look at the laws and look at the policies and determine whether or not the policy is beyond the law and outside the scope of the law. And that would then be arbitrary and capricious if it was, and unrelated companies could apply for the same people.
Well, John, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are nearing the end of our session. So before I give it back to you for closing remarks, I do want to let everyone watching know that you can register for the webinar that's happening on Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. Central by going to OnlineVisas.com/webinar and register right on that page. Thank you. Back to you, John.
Cool. Thanks, Pierre. Let's go around and have some parting. We didn't talk much about what people were doing this week, but some parting thoughts on a Friday, gloomy Friday in America, January, the Monday of the year. But we're almost near the end. Ashley, what are you thinking?
Just in general?
Yeah. Thoughts on
Uh,
your head.
It's busy for January, and that's good. I like to stay busy, so just plugging away, getting things
What do you think
filed.
about the Detroit Lions?
It's great. This was the
Yeah.
year that I decided to get into a fantasy football league. So, the very first year I've cared about football at all, and look what happens.
I think it's your. You should get all the
What
benefit.
happened?
It was
You should
me.
walk around
Yeah.
Detroit. Yeah,
You're welcome.
It's Ashley.
Oh, the
Well, I don't
Lions?
think many people in Detroit have been this excited in January and quite some
Yeah, I
time.
tried to get tickets, but they were crazy expensive.
What?
We're looking at a Thunder game. You might need to come down for our Thunder game. We're thinking of a box.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll keep it posted.
American football just. I've never gotten into American football. So
Well, this
We're
year,
talking
Men-
basketball.
men
I'm sorry, I
Don't
pivoted.
explain it well. You have to have a woman explain how it works to you, because once a woman
Oh.
explained it to me, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
that makes sense.
well, this is the
all I
can't
see
wait
is
to
like
hear-
concussion.
I can't wait to hear what that was. The distinction. That'd be fun to hear next
Well,
time.
this is
Yeah.
like the year of the renaissance for women starting to like football with all the Taylor Swift fans. It's like
Yes, that's
football
exactly
is
right.
flipping over to the other gender. It's not just a man's thing anymore.
True.
Oh,
True
the
that.
year.
it's the most American thing to happen.
It is the most American
American
thing.
football
It's
is
very-
World Series, but yet America's the only one that plays in it. So I'm kind of skeptical, y'all.
Well, I'm glad you called it the World Series instead of the Super Bowl. That makes
Oh yeah, that's what it's called. I'm sorry. There we go. Yeah, World Super Bowl. Oops. We'll
Still
take that
good.
out.
The edit
Exactly.
Edit that out.
edit that out. Gabby, what are your thoughts?
Well, on the kind of unrelated side, but also related, on the Visas.AI side, we're having some really exciting developments right now. We are going live this week with bulk upload with document parsing. So
Yeah.
in the past, you could just upload one document at a time in the document checklist. Now you can upload them all at once, and it will identify where they go
Transformative.
within the checklist. So that's been a long time coming. Really excited
Yeah.
about that. It's paired with the bulk download now. So I think the whole document exchange experience is going to be transformative for internal team and for our clients as well. So really excited about that. I also got to see a demo of our RFE responder. So we're so
You did?
I did. We're within.
I did not.
You're gonna see it Monday. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
It's scheduled. I scheduled one for you. You just were unavailable when I was available. So
I love that.
they just did me a quick run through. So that was really exciting. I'm just
Hey, put yes on that too. The RFE
Monday.
response